Welcome to the Chasing Goalpost podcast, where we elevate authentic human stories while sharing personal finance, growth, and career insights along the way. Now, before we introduce our guest today, as always, we got to go through a few quick disclaimers. The content provided on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as advice. Before making any decisions, we strongly recommend consulting with a qualified professional who can assess your individual situation. The information may not be suitable for your specific situation, and reliance on any information is at your own risk. And a full overview of our disclaimers can be accessed via our website at www.chasinggoalposts.com/disclaimers. Alrighty, well, let's get into it today. So our guest here today, exciting episode, is a visionary solopreneur who not only founded and scaled a CPG snack company, but is also a personal branding strategist. We'll be exploring the journey of how creating a delicious and healthy snack brand led to empowering others to build compelling personal brands themselves. In addition, we'll be learning about the art of storytelling on platforms like LinkedIn. Erica Rankin, welcome to the Chasing Goalpost podcast.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for the intro.
Absolutely. So Erica, being a fellow Canadian here, we got to get into the background for you. So everybody's story is a little bit unique. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, where'd you grow up, any family specifics you want to share, anything else you want to share about how you've gotten here today?
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you a quick little recap. So I grew up in a small town called Grimsby, a population of I think 25,000. It's probably a little bit more now. So small town vibes. I have a younger sister, studied psychology in university, graduated with a BA. From there, I started working in my field of psychology for a research study for about a year and a half, and stumbled across an entrepreneurship podcast at my desk one day, fell in love, and found myself booking a trip to Southeast Asia and then coming home and starting a business shortly after. So that's kind of a little bit of a recap as to how I got here.
Wow, that's very cool. So you jumped right in right after that podcast and just took it to the next level.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, good. Well, let's rewind and learn a little bit more about that entrepreneurial journey. So we understand in around December 2019, you established a company called Bro Dough that produced protein-infused cookie dough snacks, correct?
Mhm.
And my understanding is you scaled that across Canada to 200 stores nationwide. Can you maybe give us a little bit of context on how that came to be and the lead up to launching that business?
Yeah, so I guess rewinding a little bit, back in 2018, I competed in bodybuilding. So I was very immersed in the fitness space and started working with a coach for about a year and a half. And obviously, I couldn't eat the same things that I used to eat, like, donuts and cookies and cakes and cookie dough and all the things that our sweet tooth loves. So I got really creative in the kitchen and I started reinventing a lot of my favorite treats. And one of them was cookie dough. And I would make these cookie dough bites. They had added protein, cleaner ingredients. I would just make them by the dozen, put them in the freezer, and they would just kind of be a grab and go snack for me. And one of the reasons why I made this was because I couldn't find anything like it in the grocery store. And in this journey, going through my prep days for my bodybuilding shows, I was documenting, my cut and all the things that I was creating. I was sharing recipes on my social media. And I did build a little bit of a following, and a lot of people really gravitated towards this one recipe that I shared with this protein cookie dough. So that's kind of where the seed was planted initially. And I never really thought anything of it. And I just kind of went about my life. I competed at my shows, was working my 9 to 5, was deeply unfulfilled, was listening to this entrepreneurship podcast day in and day out. And I would get so fired up at my desk and feel like, it's his name was Andy Forsala, and I felt like he spoke to me, and I got so excited about this completely different life that I didn't really have any knowledge of. I didn't know that it was a viable path I could take. And I competed at my shows. I won my shows. It didn't feel as good as I thought it would be. And I'm someone who always has to be working towards something. So, that finish line, I passed it. And then I thought, okay, is this it? Am I just going to work in this cubicle for the rest of my life? Like, what's next for me? And they wanted to renew my contract, and I decided to not renew it. And I booked a one-way ticket to Southeast Asia, Thailand, which then turned into, it was supposed to be a 1 month trip, and then it turned into 3 months. And on this trip, I met entrepreneurs, and I was actually able to have conversations with people who were, building businesses, doing things that I thought you needed certain qualifications to do. But in reality, a lot of them were in completely different careers. They knew nothing about the industry prior to entering it. They were high school dropouts. They had all these really interesting stories. And the one commonality that I found with a lot of these people is that whenever they talked about what they did, their face would light up and they would be excited about, what they do for work. And I thought, wow, this is so weird. Everyone back home has the Sunday scaries and they live for, the Fridays and the weekends, and they hate Mondays. I just remember thinking, like, whatever it is that these people have, I want. So I got home from my trip, and I remember sitting on my mom's carpet, and I had my notes out on my phone, and I thought, okay, what do people want? What does the market need, and what do I enjoy doing? Those are the three questions. And I've always been really passionate about food. The market didn't have the healthier treats that, I was making for myself and that others loved too. So I landed on that product, and then landed on Brodo because of me being a bro, being in bodybuilding. I was going to do Proto, but it was trademarked. So I had to learn all about that. And then the next thing I did was Google business workshop near me, and I drove 45 minutes to the closest business resource center. And I remember sitting in a room with like 20 other new entrepreneurs figuring out how to write a business plan and manage cash flow and how to brand a product and all these things. And then later that year is when I actually ended up launching the business 3 months before the pandemic. And it was a journey. I made it in a commercial kitchen. I was in Grimsby at the time, and I wanted to move to a new city, but I couldn't afford to move to Toronto. So I thought, okay, where can I move? I want to get away from my old life and kind of start fresh. And I landed on Ottawa because it was more affordable. So I found a roommate on Kijiji, which is similar to Craigslist for those who maybe don't know, who aren't Canadian.
I'm
But
very familiar with
found
Kijiji being Canadian for sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I found this woman. She was probably like, I don't know, maybe in her mid 30s, and I was in my mid 20s at the time, early 20s. I never met her before, but I moved in with her, and we were roommates for 6 months. And I built my business out of my car and our apartment, and then eventually I moved into a 1 bedroom. But that's kind of how I got started with it.
Out of your car and an apartment, so that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
it was crazy.
So, I mean, leading up to that, I think a lot of people, we think about, everybody wants to start their own business and follow their passion. I mean, obviously that had to be a bit scary for you too, jumping away from your 9 to 5 and into something like this. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think what was more scary for me was just staying where I was because I was not happy. And I basically was kind of at rock bottom at that point. There was a lot of other things that were kind of going on beneath the surface. Like I had just finished my bodybuilding show. I developed like really bad eating disorders. I was living at home with my parents. A lot of my friends, were getting married and having salary jobs, and I just felt like in a way the system kind of tricked me, right? Like you go to school, you graduate, and then you're under the impression that you're going to land this really great job and you're going to have benefits and you're going to be set for life. And that's just not the reality of it all. Everyone has a degree now. It doesn't mean anything. And I remember getting the job, and I remember the interview. I was in this boardroom at this really long table, and there were three women who were interviewing me. And had no idea that I was being interviewed by three people. And they took turns asking me questions. And I don't think I ever sweat so much in my whole life. Like, it was crazy. And I thought, okay, wow, I got the job, and the pay wasn't listed. And I was under the impression that I was going to get, like, compensated pretty well, and I was getting paid less than what my sister was getting paid, and she dropped out of school and was working at a grocery store. So I thought, I don't have benefits. I'm getting paid pretty much nothing. And the things that I'm doing, I could have done before getting my degree, but the prerequisite was a degree. I was doing data entry, I was photocopying, I was answering the phone. Um, so I think for me, it was scary to like step into the unknown, but what was more scary was to stay where I was because I wasn't happy where I was.
Oh, that's great. I love that. I mean, it's scary to jump in and do new things, but maybe it's scary to be standing still instead, is kind of what
Yeah.
you're saying there. So, well, very cool. So, Obviously we've talked a bit about it. I've gone through a little bit of my career as well from a startup perspective. The trials, tribulations, peaks and valleys of starting a new business and scaling a business and getting to profitability. If you had to pick a couple lessons that you learned along the way, along the journey of Brodo, what would those be?
Don't start a food business. I hate crushing people's dreams, but it's just, yeah, it's a really challenging industry. I mean, yeah, that in a nutshell, I guess it's good to be naive and not know a lot of things getting into something because if you knew everything, then you wouldn't do it, you know? You just have to jump into things but with both feet and then learn as you go. But my business model just was not it was not good. It was not set up to be successful. And I was shipping a refrigerated product online in the summer across a very large country with a smaller population. And I ran into many challenges. But aside from operations and the industry, one thing that I really wish I did differently, I'm a very stubborn person. I'm a lot better now, but when I first started my business, I wanted to do everything. I had founder syndrome. I wanted my hands in every aspect of the business, and I didn't want anyone else to help me because I thought I could do it best. And I thought, okay, you know, um, I want to do it best. I don't have the money or the resources to invest in people or tools or services to help me. And another thing I didn't do was seek mentorship or, advisory from anyone because I thought, I can do it my own way and figure it out. And so about a year in, I hit a plateau and I couldn't grow anymore and I didn't know how to grow my business. And, being in Ottawa, a lot of my friends work for the government, so I couldn't go to them with my problems. I'm like, I don't know how to get into Whole Foods or how do I pitch a distributor or how do I fix my margins or source a manufacturer? And these are all things that I had no idea how to do. And there's only so much Google can tell you. Like you can't just go and Google a lot of these things. So I remember going through my pantry and finding a lot of the products that I consume on a regular basis. And I went on LinkedIn and I started reaching out to founders and CEOs of these companies. And it was terrifying because, rejection sucks. And you're like, wow, I'm just, this girl who's storing cookie dough in my car and making it in the kitchen at midnight, like, who am I? Are they going to get on a call with me? I don't know. So a lot of them actually did. They were very receptive and they donated their time and to this day, some of them are still mentors to me, which I'm very grateful for. But I just think back, like, if I had sent those messages earlier on, I would have been a lot further in my business and I probably would have made less mistakes too.
Sure. Yeah. No, you can't underestimate the power of mentorship, and it's tough because if your friend network isn't used to launching businesses, they don't really understand what you're going through, and
Yeah.
obviously 9 to 5 is a little bit different. So I appreciate you sharing those lessons and some of those along the way. But how about we switch over to like maybe your favorite memories of your time at Brodo? I know when we've gone through, I've gone through startups before, and there's a lot of challenges and there's a lot of stressful nights and lack of sleep and long hours. But if you look back on that now, there's a couple really cool memories and frames of reference as well. So maybe if you could share some of your favorite memories of the 4 year journey.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing for me was seeing my product on a shelf for the first time ever. Like it felt so surreal and having friends and customers go into grocery stores and send me pictures of like my product on shelf. Like that was a very proud moment because it took so much to get to that point. And that's definitely a highlight. I've been able to collaborate with some of my favorite brands. Like Smart Sweets was one that I really, looked up to and was kind of, a business that I respected a lot in the better for you space. And the fact that I was able to collaborate with them and then even just the ability for me to connect with other founders too and give back. Like I feel like my purpose here is to serve and I try to do that through the content I put out on social media like in an authentic way and showcase what it's really like to build a business. Like it's shit a lot of times. It's okay to talk about it. But I think, even yesterday, like I had a call with another founder who's going through the exact same thing that I went through with my business and struggling. And it's just really nice to be able to help based off of the experiences that I've gone through.
Oh, very cool. We say here we want to share authentic stories, and I think you've actually posted about this in the past. Sometimes it's challenging on social media to see authentic stories because everybody you're showing the peak of the mountain or the tip of the iceberg. You're not showing the seven eighths of that iceberg that are below the surface, right? Struggles, challenges, late nights, early mornings, all those kind of things. So, no, very cool. Yeah, I can imagine, jumping into a store in Canada, Safeway or whatever it might be, and all of a sudden seeing your product there. That'd be pretty surreal for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, cool. Let's dive into present day. So there's obviously a lot of exciting things going on in your life right now. A lot of changes. One of those developments is a personal branding business. Can you give us a little bit of an introduction on the branding business and kind of what you're doing there?
Hmm. Yeah, obviously, so Brodo got shut down in January, and I decided to pivot again. I've just pivoted so much throughout the 4 years of being an entrepreneur, and I'm really grateful in a way because, when you're building a product-based business, you do everything. You have your hands in every aspect, every nook and cranny of the business. You learn, you're forced to learn because you can't go and hire talent to figure it out. So in doing that, I realized, okay, I'm really not great at operations, and I really hate it, and I really don't want to do it anymore, and it's something that I don't want to have in my future. It doesn't make me happy. But however, marketing, like, I'm very good at, and I really enjoy, and it comes very natural to me. And I've done a lot of consulting around that. I've had a lot of founders come to me, and I've worked with them one on one, just kind of mentoring them and guiding them and teaching them how to really leverage organic content, because I think there's a big misconception around marketing that you need to just invest thousands and thousands of dollars into paid ads and then you're good. That's not really the case. You kind of have to have the organic and then the paid intertwined, because you want to keep community and you want people to be loyal to you and your product or your service or whatever it may be, because there's always going to be competition. So now I'm pivoting kind of into the personal branding, consulting, direction, and I'm working one-on-one with people. And then on top of that, I'm going to launch a cohort where I'll have like group calls and teach people how to really create a compelling story on LinkedIn that allows them to become a thought leader in their industry. And, in doing that, when you create your personal brand lives on forever. You could have a million businesses, but people are going to know who you are. People are going to follow Dustin. They're going to, love what you're doing and support what you're doing, even if your business changes time and time again. Versus if you're just focusing on the business, if the business comes and goes, it's a lot harder and it's less of a personable connection to that, right? So that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm just kind of teaching people how to do that. And I think it's important that people start building their personal brand sooner than later.
That's interesting. As we've gone through my career, for example. There's been times, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but where you attach your identity to a business or you attach your identity to a career or to a job. So I think I know where you're coming from there, where it's like, hey, my worth is based upon how I did here or how I did here, how the business did, or what kind of year we had, right? So I can relate to that for sure. So
Yeah, it's hard.
yes, it is. And just detaching yourself from that obviously is an important piece. So let's stick on that personal brand dynamic. So, for those out there listening that, are wanting to build their own personal brands, what would you recommend they do initially from a strategy standpoint? Obviously, you talk a lot about telling stories on LinkedIn. Can you give the audience a little bit of a sneak peek or glimpse into, if you were on a consulting call with somebody, what would you start with?
Yeah, so I think you need to identify what you want to be known as. Like, what kind of value can you add? Personal branding is, yeah, it's very professional and it's kind of like what you do. And you can share a lot about what you do and you can talk about the wins. You can talk about, the fundraising and the whatever you're doing, your startup, all those things. But then on top of that, like, who are you? What's important to you? What matters to you? Is it health and wellness? Are you really big on family? Are you passionate about, I don't know, do you teach surfing? I don't know. There could be like many layers that go into it, because I think people realize now, especially since, the pandemic, our professional and our personal lives are intertwined. They're not compartmentalized. And it's very, very important to humanize, ourselves online and kind of take away the shiny stuff. And a quote I really love is, people admire success, but they connect with vulnerability. So I think sit down, create like 3 or 4 buckets of content, that is very aligned with you and like stuff that you can add value to your community. And then also be consistent. Like, that's a huge thing, is people They get really excited and they blow through all this content for like a month, and then they run out of things, and then they don't post again. And then they're super discouraged because they think, oh, like I worked so hard and, I didn't really get the community or the ROI. I have people come to me and they're like, okay, if I invest 2 hours a day into LinkedIn, like what's the ROI? And I'm like, you can't, that's not a question. You can't answer that question.
Yeah.
I've been building on there for, a long time, and it takes a long time. But it's worth it. It's compounding interest.
So I want to hit on that because I think obviously that's part of the challenge with any entrepreneurial venture or any platform. People come in and they're like, okay, I'm going to post 100 times, and then my follower base is going to be 100,000 people, and everything's just going to be fine. But I think there's an important piece. So we talk a little bit about in building financial capabilities, right? How long that takes to compound over time, but it also takes a long time to build a business. It takes way longer than everybody thinks, and it also takes a lot longer to build a following. Because I think it's important to understand the amount of people you have following you is significant, but you put a lot of time and effort into that and compounded it over time, to your point.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes time. I've been at it for about 4 years. But what I've gotten out of it it's been incredible. Like I found my employee there. He reached out to me and he was one of the best things to ever happen to my business. Got mentorship, I got advisors, I found investors. And I kind of looked at LinkedIn as well as it's a place to build bridges. So you go on there and you're building bridges, you're building out relationships, you're collaborating, you're seeing if there's synergies, and then maybe one day you're going to need to cross that bridge. It's a lot harder to go out and get things if you haven't put in the work prior to prepare those things, if that makes sense. And people come to me too and they're like, well, I'm not raising money right now, or I'm not looking to grow my team. Well, you're going to one day eventually. So why don't you just put in an hour every day into this platform? That's going to make your life so much easier down the road. Because those things are really hard to do if you don't have a community and a network of people who trust you and believe in what you're doing. Um, yeah, so it does take time. And in 2023, I posted over 400 times. I posted, I think, one time minimum a day. I didn't miss a single day. And it was
Wow.
a challenge that me and my friend had. We were like, okay, we're going to post every single day this year. And I think he missed one day. I think he missed one day, but he did stay true to his word. He did post every other day of the year. And in doing that, it was like I did get significant growth in my account and a lot more engagement. But on the flip side, I announced that I shut down my business in January, and I had an overwhelm response of opportunities come in. Like I had someone fly me out to Costa Rica like a month and a half ago. He's like, okay, I'll fly you out. I want you to join my team. I want you to meet my team. If it's not going to work out, then whatever, you get a free trip out of it. So it sounds sketchy, but it wasn't.
Right.
um, but you know what I mean? Like there's just all these things that come through for you if you put in the work. And if, as long as you're also authentic and you're true to you and you have good intentions, I think that's really important. Like whenever I share something on LinkedIn, I think, okay, is this going to help someone? Does someone need to see this? Would I have needed to see this years ago? Like, would this have helped me and prevented me from making mistakes, or, been something that really resonated with me? And another quote that I really love is, we're best equipped to help the person we used to be, which I think is so true. For me, if I'm not putting out content, if I know I have a lot of value, like valuable information to share with people, and I'm not sharing it, I'm doing others a disservice, and I'm doing myself a disservice, because so much can be done with that and you can help so many people. So that's another thing that I kind of think of when I'm a little bit resistant to sharing stuff online.
No, that's great. I mean, you kind of look back across your journey and say, hey, someone else is sitting in my shoes that I was 3, 4 years ago or whatever, and how can I help them? So, and obviously, the opportunities you have in front of you right now is basis the network you've built and the value you've created. And a lot of times we talk about this where people are where they are today because of the work they put in the last 6 to 18 months, and in building authentic relationships and authentic networks. So, kudos to you on that. I'd like to come back just that quote. That caught me off guard a little bit. I really like that quote. What was that quote you mentioned earlier?
We're best equipped to help the person we used to be.
That one, and there was one before that about vulnerability.
People admire success, but they respect vulnerability.
Admire success, but okay, I like that a lot. I'm gonna keep that one. So we appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing. That's very good. That's very cool. Yeah, that one resonates with me a lot. So I know that recently on LinkedIn you have mentioned something about a podcast that you're about to launch, and so just wanted to give the audience members and a little bit of a sneak peek on what Eric is up to there. And obviously, I know you want to kind of keep some of it confidential until you launch, but do you have any idea of when you're going to launch it and ultimately what it's going to be called, what you're going to talk about on the podcast, anything that you're willing to share to give the audience maybe a bit of a sneak peek?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll leave the title like blank for now.
Okay, fair.
I'm holding on to that one, but yeah, it's interesting because it's gonna kind of be related to business, but not so much. It's more so just gonna be about accepting all parts of you, right? Like I think a lot of us hold a lot of shame around our past and the things that we've done and the things that we've been through, and it's really hard for people to dig deep and get vulnerable and have vulnerable conversations because it's uncomfortable. And I just want to create a podcast and create a safe space for people where they can be open and they can feel seen and heard. And I'm an open book. I've been through a lot and I feel like I've lived many lives. And there's a whole nother side of me that I haven't really showed the world yet that I've, held shame around. And I want to open up that part of myself to just show people like it's okay. What you've done in your past doesn't define or discredit what you've built. I did an ayahuasca retreat a few weeks ago and kind of everything came up from my past and kind of ties into the podcast. I feel like now I'm in a really good place where I can talk about things that I've kind of hidden from the world for the past like 10 years. And I wanted to launch a podcast for like 10 years. And I've just been scared and haven't had the time. And now I feel like the universe is making everything come together so beautifully and is pushing me to launch it. So it should be coming out next month. And I'm going to launch a podcast a week. Every Thursday morning, it's going to come out. They're going to be solo episodes to start, and then I'm going to bring on guests. And yeah, I'm excited for it.
Awesome. Well, we'll look. We'll stay tuned for the name, and
Yeah.
look forward to tuning in here next month on Thursdays or whenever we can. I'm guessing it'll be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
Yeah.
all those things. Okay, great. Well, we look forward to hearing from you when that launches, and then we'll help you get the story out because it sounds like a very cool theme and podcast, and I think a lot of people will be interested in it as well.
Yeah. Thanks.
So yeah, that's great. Looking forward to that. So one of the questions we ask everyone on the Chasing Goalpost podcast is, what are you ultimately chasing?
I'm chasing right now. The ultimate goal is abundance. I want abundance. And I'm chasing happiness. I just want to wake up in the morning and be so happy and so grateful for the life that I have. And I'm there. And I almost have full abundance, but there's a couple things that I'm missing. The romantic and then the financial. Those are the two that I need. So I'm waiting. I'm waiting it out and being patient. But yeah, that's abundance, I guess, is the ultimate goal.
No, that's cool. I think you mentioned something earlier about you accomplish something, you cross that line, and then you're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
what's next? And the reason why we started chasing goalposts is kind of like we chase these goals, we achieve them, we reset the goalposts, and we keep going. It's just kind of part of life. So we appreciate the context there on the abundance. So
Mm-hmm.
listen, I mean, we've always got limited time here today. We really appreciate you sharing all this insight. I mean, we've covered, launching essentially a CPG brand from scratch, right? The trials, tribulations, peaks and valleys of that, starting a personal branding business, ultimately, growing an authentic network, and then you got a podcast coming down the pipeline here. So lots of exciting things for Erica coming down the pipe. If people want to get a hold of you or if people want to follow you, is it fair to assume that LinkedIn is probably the best platform to follow you on?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably best. Erica Rankin, Erica with a C.
Okay. Well, and just for the audience's awareness, we'll post, if you're good with it, we'll attach a link to your profile when we go live with the show notes,
Cool.
so that people can get connected with you directly through that and follow your journey, follow your story, and ultimately reach out if they have interest in the personal branding side or learning from you, and ultimately too with the podcast. So I assume you'll be promoting the podcast on LinkedIn as well for people to see.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, we're going to wind things down here, Erica. I'm going to give you the floor. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience before we finish things up here.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to fear and being afraid of things, I think rather than running away from it, you need to run to it. You need to run towards it. And I heard that piece of advice a few weeks ago, and I think it's really true. And every time you do something that you're totally terrified to do, you very rarely regret it, you know? It always helps you in some shape or form. You learn something, you grow, you tap into something new. It's worth it. So I think that's just something to take note of.
Awesome. No, we really appreciate that insight and sharing what you've learned here. Thank you again for your time today and sharing all this information, and all the best as you move forward in both your branding business and your podcast, and whatever else life has for you to in the future.
Thanks, Justin.
All right. Take care, Erica.